I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor and host of our very special Roundtable Q&A. Gold Derby presents The Making of CODA. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by writer-director Sian Heder, nominated for her very first Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, newly minted Screen Actors Guild Award winner Troy Kotsur, nominated for his very first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and producer Patrick Wachsberger, nominated for Best Picture alongside co-producers Philippe Rousselet and Fabrice Gianfermi. Everybody, welcome and congratulations on your Oscar nominations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering who would like to tell us first about the morning of the announcement and your reaction to hearing this really awesome news.
I could not leave bed.
You couldn't leave bed? What do you mean?
I was so shocked of happiness that I decided to sleep an extra hour.
So Patrick, you woke up, heard it, and then you just stayed in bed. Is that what happened?
That's exactly right.
I got up in the dark. Oh, I'll go first, right? I got up in the dark and I was watching on my laptop with my husband, and we were being very quiet because our children were still sleeping. And Daniel, my screen was delayed, but for my text messages were coming up on screen. So they hadn't announced Adapted Screenplay yet. And all of a sudden I just saw like a yay come up on my computer from Daniel, like a text. And then I saw another text from someone saying like, congratulations, or it was another yay. And I was like, what are they yaying about? What are they yaying about? Because it hadn't announced anything yet. And then finally I saw it, and my husband and I screamed so loud that our dog, like, who's insane, jumped up on us and started like biting and humping us as we were screaming and jumping around. And then, you know, my kids just slept through the whole thing. And I woke them up in the morning and I said, I got nominated for an Oscar, you guys. And they were like, what is that? We don't care.
Oh, what about you, Troy?
Well, I was out of town and my wife was in Phoenix and I was in California. And so I had to get up very early in the morning, and I was with my wife on FaceTime. Thank God for this wonderful technology we have now. And so I saw my life live over FaceTime. And when it was announced, I was so excited. I jumped for joy, a bit more controlled. And I kissed her on my phone, but of course I'd prefer to give her a hug in person. But of course I was so excited and overjoyed, really.
But then Troy and I FaceTimed, and then we both started crying and had a moment over FaceTime as well. I think it was a celebration, but it was also very emotional. I think it was unexpected and emotional.
When you called me and I saw how emotional your face was, I could just tell how proud you were and how thrilled we were with that good news.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you know, many of us love this movie and we're so thrilled for you. I haven't spoken to a single person who has said anything but just complete joy about CODA and about how it makes them feel something. And it just seems to have come at just the right time. So congrats to making so many people feel so happy. Let's dive into a bit more of the congratulations. Troy, you guys just won the SAG Ensemble win, as well as your own individual win. That's incredible. To me, it was a perfect award because you all got to celebrate together, not just Marley, Amelia, and Daniel, but also Eugenio and Ferdia. What was the highlight from the SAG Awards for you?
My favorite memory from that night was being recognized by so many of these A-list celebrities. You know, I've seen all of these faces in movies for so many years, and now I feel like live I'm joining the club, and I was able to meet many of them, like Will Smith and Cody Smith McPhee, and it just I felt like I finally was into TV and film and in that world, meeting all these people as peers, and I was able to celebrate with them. So just the fact that I was being recognized by my peers. When I received the award and I was up on stage, I felt like they were increasing their awareness of the deaf community and increasing the awareness of us as powerful storytellers. And it meant a lot, the fact that they were opening their hearts and minds to us as deaf actors.
Yeah, you could totally actually see that your reaction at the table, and then of course your speech, was so genuine. It was probably the highlight of the evening. I love the way you all stood up on stage when you won the ensemble prize, and Marley gave that beautiful acceptance speech. Is it special to be able to celebrate an award as a cast, so that, because, you know, without each other, the movie isn't as successful as it could be?
I completely agree with what you said. It just was so raw. You know, we got supporting actor and best ensemble, and Daniel, Marley, Eugenio, Amy, Ferdia, and Amelia are just such awesome actors. I was so impressed working with them, and with our cast together, I was thrilled to be able to celebrate together in that moment. And it's very rare. It doesn't happen quite often like that.
Yeah. Patrick, CODA is based on a successful 2014 French language film, The Bellier Family. Why do you think that material was ripe for an English language adaptation?
Well, I think that the basic movie was really, really good, but there's no reason to do an adaptation of a foreign movie unless you can elevate it at a different level. And that's basically all what Sian has been doing. I mean, she basically wrote an amazing screenplay. And, you know, this is there may be only a handful of time that a story that really touched human heart crossed a producer's path. And that was the time for this one. And she basically directed an amazing movie. She really got the most incredible cast, and that's that.
Yeah. Patrick, explain to us your role as producer. A lot of people probably don't quite completely appreciate what a producer brings to the table. So for yourself, Philippe and Fabrice, what was your main function in making sure this movie was going to be made, you know, efficiently and smoothly, and then of course shepherding it through all its various stages right up to now, the lead up to the Oscars?
Well, I mean, each movie is a different story. On this one, it's very, very clear that this movie was developed when I was running the motion picture group at Lionsgate. And I knew really well that unfortunately it was not going to happen there the way we all wanted this movie to be made. And when I left, I want to be sure that I took this movie away with me. In my luggage, that was the only thing I took away from my departure from Lionsgate. And it was about, Sian had a great vision of the way she wanted to do it. And we both fought for it. The way she wanted to cast the movie, the way she wanted to, where she wanted to shoot the movie. So it was about putting the pieces together from the beginning, where, we started, we had really no money. It was like, first of all, how do we get this project out? And I remember going to Cannes and meeting distributors in the street and basically telling them what I was doing next. And with the passion that I had for Sian and this project, sold, licensed a lot of the territories. And then, Philippe helped me on the wraparound, going to Pathé to basically put the money that was needed to fill the gap. And then the rest is history. And, Sian got an amazing crew together as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Sian, it's quite clear that a lot of this film is your vision. I'm curious to know how it came about that you would adapt the source material and then, of course, go on to direct it and create this beautiful film that we all love.
Well, I came in and pitched originally to Patrick at Lionsgate. So the movie, you know, they had the rights to do the remake, and they were looking for a filmmaker who could, you know, like Patrick said, sort of, there's no reason to do a remake unless you have a real take on the material and you can reinvent the movie, and there's a reason for it existing again. So when I saw the original, there was just that premise was so rich. I love the idea of this CODA character who lives between the hearing world and the deaf world and has to navigate both, but feels kind of a part of neither. Like, that was a very interesting tension in a character. I was struck that I had never seen a deaf family on screen before, just sitting around a dinner table chatting. And unfortunately, in the French film, those actors, the parents, were played by hearing actors. So there wasn't the opportunity to use ASL in the way that it really could be used on screen, and to explore the deaf experience and deaf culture in the way that it could be explored with authentically deaf actors. And I had grown up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I've been going up to Gloucester every summer of my life because we had a lot of friends that lived up there. And that town, when I started to think, okay, you know, the French movie takes place in a small provincial town and they're dairy farmers. I was like, what's the version of a dying working class America? Like, what is that struggle? What are the jobs or the professions where a family is really losing their livelihood and needs to sort of reinvent how they're thinking about the world? And Gloucester just popped up for me because I think it's a very rich visual place. It's this combination of being very picturesque and cinematic, but also very gritty. It's a really working class town, and all the people there are characters, as Troy knows well from hanging out with all the Gloucester fishermen. So it just was vivid to me. I could see this family as this hard scrabble fishing family. And I went in and pitched to Patrick, and we have some other executives there, and they got excited about my take on it. And then, as Patrick said, it was a struggle. I was so clear on how I wanted to make the film and who I wanted to cast, and, you know, not wanting to compromise on those things. And it wasn't a fit for the studio. So there were years there where I thought, oh, this is never going to happen. It sort of died at the studio. And I thought, oh, this is really sad. And I put everything into writing the script, and I love it so much, but this other version of the movie shouldn't exist. So I'm sort of okay with letting it go if I can't make it the way I want it. And then I remember, you know, Patrick, again, put the movie in his luggage and snuck out of Lionsgate with the movie.
Exhibit A.
We had to pay them off. We had to buy the movie back from them. But then honestly, I was like, how are we going to independently finance this movie? I'm an indie filmmaker. That's the world that I come from. And Patrick, being the crafty guy that he is, was like, I got this, went to Cannes, again, was like deal making on cocktail napkins, you know, selling the script, selling the idea of this cast in this movie. And it was so exciting because the way that we made the film was perfect. It was incredibly hard, and it was scrappy, and we didn't have enough time or enough days. But I had absolute freedom, you know, as a filmmaker. And so I can own it completely. And Patrick was such a support in that. And I remember he watched my director's cut and got on the phone with me, and he said, okay, great, we're done. And I said, nothing? Like, you don't have any notes? He's like, no, I love it. I love what you did. And that never happens. It never happens.
By the way, it never happens. It never happens in general. Yeah.
No, you don't. You have like so much meddling, and there's always people looking over your shoulder and giving you notes and pushing you here or there. And the fact that, you know, and in a way it was pressure, because I was like, well, if this movie sucks, then that's fully on me. I can't blame anybody else. But if it's good, I can feel proud that it's a true expression of me and exactly what I wanted. I was not asked to compromise.
Wow.
But then COVID came.
Then COVID came, and I was asked to compromise.
And then COVID came, and that was like really complicated of saying, so you have a gem, it's in the can. What do we do with it? Where do we show the movie to the world? How do we show the movie for the first time? And that was really, really the complex situation we had to live with, right?
It was stressful. I mean, we had no distributor in place. COVID happened, festivals were kind of falling apart, and it really we thought like we know we made something really special, but we don't know how it's going to get out there in the world. And so Sundance, I remember the pressure. The day of Sundance, I was just roaming around my house with massive stomach ache. Like, I just hope this movie sells. I hope anybody wants it. I hope it just has an outlet, because we'd all worked so hard on it. And, you didn't know if there was a path forward in the middle of that.
And how they're going to see the movie. In other words, it's a totally different experience when you have basically studio executive or independent executive watching a movie with a crowd in Sundance at the Echo Theater, or alone at home watching it on the screen.
Yeah.
On the TV, right. I mean, on the TV.
Yeah, and some people may
You have a screen, Patrick. We don't have.
Of course, I can see it behind you. People probably don't fully appreciate that at Sundance 2021, this film scored this mammoth deal from Apple TV Plus. And I read an interview actually with Philippe where he said maybe 10 years ago, a movie like CODA would have gotten a platform specialty release if you're lucky, and then it would have moved on. But you got this incredible visibility and access through a streaming platform like Apple TV Plus. So I'm wondering, Sian and Patrick, how important was that to this film's overall success? Like, it was almost like kismet that COVID happened, which was horrifying, but yet you were able to find a silver lining.
I think that, Apple is one of the newer streamers, right? So Apple is starting out, and Apple's building their slate as well. And I worked at Netflix on Orange is the New Black when we were the first show on, it was like us and House of Cards.
And yes, and no one else.
Yeah, no one else. So it was like Netflix was kind of like, I don't know, we believe in you guys. And they were looking to build their thing. And I think there was that, yes, on one hand, Apple is this major company, obviously one of the biggest companies in the world, but at the same time, they are new to the content creation and building their platform. And so they're incredibly invested in a way that I think, I've never had so much involvement. I've never had so much involvement with the trailer, the poster. What do you think? We want your voice in here. So they were very wonderful. They were a wonderful place to be, and they really believed in the movie and they pushed it forward hard. And it is amazing to see it in the company that it's in, with these movies that had, Denis Villeneuve, I heard say the other day, oh, we had a 3,000 person crew on Dune. And you're like, what? Like, wow, 3,000 people. Like, but the fact that we're even in the company that we're in is a testament to, I think, the way that Apple put the movie out there as well.
I would like to say that I was really, really impressed by Apple. And I was really trying to reflect after our first marketing meeting with this entire group there, and they have so many divisions getting together. What I realized is that two things. First of all, everyone at Apple working on the movie loved the movie. So that was like a big victory. There was no, oh my God, this is another movie we have to take care of. There was like, they were unified. And they really look at this movie as a lab for them of saying, you know what, we love it and we're gonna do the best. And they've done an amazing job. They've done an amazing job, and they're still doing an amazing job.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is Troy, if I may chime in. So after Apple TV Plus bought our film, I remember Sian asking me my opinion and saying, hey, should we add subtitles, or what's the difference between having access, like the rear window closed captioning for deaf people in the theater? And, I always had problems with access as a deaf audience member. And then we decided to burn in the captioning. And that was truly amazing. And it was actually such a big deal. It was really very brave of them to make that decision. It required a lot of courage. And it was the first time I've seen a deaf hearing and hard of hearing audience be able to react simultaneously. And, some deaf people don't know sign language and use their voices, and some know sign language, or others are second language English speakers, but everyone was able to react simultaneously, which was truly amazing, which I've never seen in my entire life. And I'm a movie freak and I love going to the movies. So I'm so grateful to Apple TV for being such a game changer in that way.
And they didn't fight about, I mean, I remember when we all talked about it and said, oh, we need to have open captions. And I went to Apple like a little bit scared, like, okay, is this going to be another massive fight? Like this is important to me. I don't want to just caption the ASL. I want to caption all the dialogue. I want open captions on screen. And they were like, great. And I was like, I can't believe that was not the bigger fight, because it's a massive fight with studios all the time. And they knew it was the right thing, and they've allowed themselves to be educated as well. And I think part of this whole process for me, for Patrick, for everyone involved is like this massive education of like, what is accessibility? What does that mean? How do we make Sundance so that everybody can share at Sundance? So we're at Sundance and we're educating Sundance on, this is what we need in place. We need interpreters for the awards ceremony. We need, and that has continued, and Apple has been a great ally in that way as well. It's like making sure that like this interview that we're doing right now is captioned. Like that's important. All these things going out in the world need to involve and honor the same community that the movie represents. Otherwise, the movie didn't do anything, because you're still ignoring the group that's been marginalized, that's being represented. So that's been an ongoing thing, but they've been great partners in that way.
Yeah, this movie is groundbreaking, and Apple's involvement has been groundbreaking. I hope people truly appreciate that. And we're so grateful for that as well. Troy, going back to the beginning, what was your first impression of the film and its characters when you first read the script?
My first impression was there was a lot of ASL dialogue, and there was more than one deaf actor. It's extremely rare. There's a long history in Hollywood where you tend to have just one deaf role, or you have a hearing actor play or mime as a deaf person. So really, these deaf characters were not victims. Frank Rossi was a hardworking man who cared about his family, just like a hearing working class family would be. A lot of hearing people's perspective is, oh, poor deaf people, I feel sorry for them. But as a fly on the wall into our deaf world, it really shifted their perspective. And deafness doesn't really mean anything. The only difference is communication. And so you see that the Rossi family works hard. They run their business just like everyone else works hard and runs their businesses. So that impacted me a lot, first of all. And we just needed to increase awareness about CODAs, because I have a CODA daughter in real life, and I've seen what she's been through. And finally, with this movie, she doesn't have to explain or educate everyone about what the experience of a CODA is like. She actually feels more accepted. And her parents that happen to be deaf feel more accepted. So it was a big impact on me when I first read the script.
Yeah.
I also just want to add, like, humor was such an important part of this story. And I think that like, that's another thing that when Troy talks about portrayals of deaf characters, and it's like, not only is it feeling sorry for the deaf character, but it's also like, there's an earnestness to those characters sometimes. And I think the fact is, like, it was important when Troy and I were talking that Frank Rossi is just as dirty and crass as all these other fishermen out there who are dropping F-bombs and have, totally un-PC and saying whatever they want, and that like this guy is of that place, and that the elements, his identity as a fisherman from Gloucester, Massachusetts is just as much a part of his identity as being deaf or deaf culture. It's like, this is a very specific family, and we weren't trying to tell a story about, all of the deaf community. We were just trying to tell this very specific story about this individual family and make them feel as real as possible.
Yeah, exactly right.
If I may chime in, how often do you see vulgar sign language in a film?
I know.
And how often do you see it in multiple scenes? I was so excited to share that aspect of deaf culture with the hearing world, because it's still intelligent humor too, and intelligent humor that many hearing people have never even thought of.
That's right. Frank Rossi is just a typical horny middle-aged man who just wants to have sex with his wife. It doesn't even matter that he's deaf. Who cares? But of course, you know, that's because they're fully dimensional characters, right? That we love and care about. And that's what I love most about the film. I'm actually really fascinated, Sian, to know how the script evolved so that the various ASL visuals were like organically incorporated into the dialogue and narrative. Like my head doesn't quite understand how you would write that in a script.
Well, my head didn't know how to do it when I started either, because I think I had to approach it. It was sort of an evolving journey as I understood how to do it. So, I mean, I wrote the script the way, I mean, I started out as an actor. So when I write, I hear voices, you know, I'm hearing all the different characters. I'm almost like playing all the different characters as I'm writing. And it was interesting because I sort of am channeling these voices and I'm hearing them because I'm a hearing person. And that's like the way that I'm thinking. And I remember there was a point in my writing where I realized how silly it was to be imagining the rhythms of spoken dialogue, because I was never going to hear this. I was going to watch it and it was going to become this purely visual experience. So I had started studying ASL very early in my writing process, I think before I even started writing. And that was part of my research with the deaf community. And I had a teacher, Hillary Back, who Troy knows, I think, but who started teaching me and we started working. And as Hillary was talking to me about the language, I was also understanding like conceptually how ASL works, which is very different from how English works. It's not the same word order or syntax or grammar, like ideas are expressed in a very different way. So in a way, as I was learning the language, that was able to start informing the scenes. And there was so much rewriting of Frank, especially, you know, as I kind of realized, like, how would he communicate and what is his humor? And then my ASL masters came in. So I had Alexandria Wales and then Ann Tomasetti took over when we were on set. And they're both deaf women and artists and actresses themselves and have a really great sense of story. So I was working on the script with them and we would sit at a table and discuss every line and also the character's intention and like with the subtext, honestly, of each line, and then make sign choices together of like, well, what, you know, Alexandria would sign something back to me and we'd sort of chat about the sign and why that would be right or wrong. So we had an idea going in. And she was making videos for Amelia, who was learning sign language in Toronto with her teacher there, but also for our actors. But then my amazing actors show up, and Troy, anyone in the deaf community will tell you that Troy is one of the most inventive, creative signers out there. And the way that Troy uses the language is so unique and original and special. So, you know, I came in with Alexandria and Ann, and we would sort of discuss with Troy, like these were our sign choices, and Troy would kind of then get ideas and he would start riffing. And so he really made it his own. And I always talk about the line, which was, I'd give my left nut to tell them to go screw themselves, that's the written line that I wrote, you know, and that's the subtitle. But Troy like made the nuts in the air and then he like pulled off one of them and then he threw it over his shoulder like a grenade and like pulled the pin out of it and then it exploded. And it's like, that's not something I wrote. Like that's Troy kind of taking what I wrote and the intention behind it and the kind of understanding the character enough to be able to jam on the line in ASL. So that was the really fun part of the script. And it was fun that I was not at all fluent in the language, but I knew enough that I could watch performance and catch all the secret F words that Troy would throw into his lines. But B, that I could appreciate what he was doing with the language, which was really beautiful. And it was a way of improvising within the line. So I would say the subtitles are the script that I wrote, but what Troy is doing with ASL is wholly something else that I think in a way you almost can't appreciate unless you sign.
Yeah, I remember that we had a conversation with Sian. I had a conversation with Sian about the amount of F word on the movie and say, you know, Sean, I just want to let you know that under the guilt thing, you cannot basically have more than 2, otherwise you're an R-rated movie.
Tell that to Troy Kotsur.
You just can't help it. You can't help it.
Well, yeah. What's really interesting is when I read the script, I could understand the hearing perspective with the hearing jokes, but my gut feeling and my instinct was to shift over to make them culturally deaf jokes. And so I was able to turn the tables with a similar intent, but sometimes ASL takes it even further. And so it's really funny that the MPAA decided to give us an R rating, because we had to do a lot of cleaning up and make agreements to have a bit more of a balance, but it was amazing. And that's so, what's so beautiful about sign language is we have such a rich history of storytelling, and it's a visually descriptive and sometimes graphic language that most people don't realize that.
Yeah, and our eyes are finally being opened to it. You know, there are so many scenes that I adored. Like every scene in the film was intentional. There was no waste, there was no fat. It was just really beautifully paced. But we must talk about the scene where Ruby sings for Frank, and he experiences the song through the palm of his hand. That scene means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to many people. Sian, I love the way you establish this desire to connect in the prior sequence when Frank's watching in the audience during Ruby's recital. Can you talk us through why you decided to show the emotions in the audience in that scene, and also show us what it felt like to see the recital through Frank's eyes?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it was, I was coming from a hearing perspective, and therefore I really needed to understand the deaf perspective. And I remember when we were shooting the bar scene where Leo goes to the bar with all the fishermen and he's kind of hanging out and trying to follow the conversation. And I asked Anne Tomasetti, who was one of our ASL masters, and Daniel actually, if they would write me something about what it feels like to be deaf and try to follow a hearing conversation when everyone's kind of moving high speed and chatting, and what it's like to follow that. And Anne wrote me this beautiful essay that was just about how she, you know, will read a line off somebody's lips, but then someone laughs over here. So she looks over this way and she misses what happened over here. And then she's picking up on gestures, and it's almost like being a detective and trying to put all the pieces together to figure out something that's happening. The most beautiful essay. I actually want her to publish this because it was a very moving thing. But I could give that to my DP, and my cinematographer read it and she said, oh, I want to operate this scene. So she actually we had camera operators, but after she'd read that, she said, I really want to operate because I feel like I've absorbed that and I want to be the camera, being Leo. So a similar thing kind of happened in the concert where I talked with Troy and I talked with Marley, because they both have kids and they both have hearing kids, and they've sat through a lot of these concerts and talked about watching the audience and how you don't actually have the full experience of what's happening, but you're looking to other people to kind of put together, you know, what's happening. I can let Troy speak to this, but it was a beautiful thing to be able to let the camera explore that. Like, how can we be Frank and Jackie in that moment? And it's that classic movie moment where you've watched Ruby rehearse that song 4 times and then you're waiting for the big performance. And actually, it was important to me to deny the audience that experience, because that wasn't the emotional payoff. The emotional payoff is in the next scene with her dad, where he's trying to connect with her, she's trying to connect with him. And it actually doesn't even matter if they do connect. It's about the effort on both of their parts, and a parent and child working to understand each other, which, as a parent now myself, that's your whole goal in life, right? Is to just like, how do I connect with my kid? How do I make my kid feel understood and loved? And like, that's what that scene is about for me. It's actually not about some kind of transference of music. To me, it's about a father trying to love his kid and understand her, and a daughter trying to explain to her dad what she loves, and them working together on that project. And these actors were so amazing. You know, I think the take in the movie was the first take that we did. And I rolled 2 cameras on them, and it was a magical moment. And I think that's what was in the movie.
Wow. Troy, this scene had a lot of impacts for you personally. And I've read that in other interviews. Can you talk us through briefly how much this scene meant to you personally?
I'll never forget when I was about 2 years old. I'll never forget when my daughter Kira was 2 years old. And so I was holding Kira and I was making an sound. And then Kira was making an sound, and I felt the vibration, and she did it again. I did it again, and she did it again. And we were doing this call and response, and I could feel the vibration of her doing that. And then suddenly she popped her head up, smiled at me, and we made that connection when she was 2 years old. And so really going to her recitals when she was younger, the hearing audience is quote unquote, they are my ears, right? So they are hearing what I'm seeing. And so how the quality of the singing depends on the audience's reaction to the singing, if you know what I mean. And so in real life, this is from my life experience. So when I was sitting next to Amelia on the back of that pickup truck as Frank Rossi, Frank still couldn't hear her, but he was fascinated to see the expressions on her face shift as she was singing. And that led to Frank's curiosity to touch her throat, to feel the vibrations, to try and have that understanding into what her daughter's musical world was like and why she was so passionate about it, to help Frank understand his daughter's passion. And it was hard for Frank to decide what was best for Ruby, and that required a lot of sacrifice for his business, because everything would have to change because she has such a beautiful voice and she had to follow her passion.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a scene like that ever that made me, reminded me of my connection with my own kids. And I watched that the second time with my 2 kids and I had tears in my eyes. So great, it was beautiful. We must move on. We're almost out of time. Sian and Patrick, music is so foundational to this story. You're all I need to get by is a wonderful song, and it's sung throughout. For me, though, it's the Joni Mitchell classic, Both Sides Now. When that is sung at the end, that's another moment that hits you in the gut. It's so beautiful. How did you land on those 2 songs? That would have made or break the film, to have the wrong song. So how did you land on those 2?
Well, and when you're writing an indie movie, you have no money for music. So music is so expensive. So we went on such a music journey where I wrote all these songs into the script. Actually, You're All I Need to Get By, I did write into the script because it was so perfect. And when I found that duet, it was lyrically, it had to fulfill all these different narrative purposes. It needed to be the song that she could sing with the boy and they could kind of fall in love with, but then it also needed to hold all of the kind of lyrical power when she sings it to her dad, and it needed to fit the actress's voice and all of that stuff. So I had written that one in, and I was delighted when Alex Patsavas, our music supervisor, ended up making a crafty deal with Sony to get a bunch of music from Sony. And I saw it on their list in their catalog. Like I went scrolling through and I found Marvin Gaye and I was like, oh my God, it's on there. It's on there. The song I had written into the script for the end song was originally Landslide by Stevie Nicks, and we couldn't get that. But also after I heard 100 girls audition with that song, I truly never wanted to hear it again, even though it was one of my favorite songs. And it felt a little more on the nose and a little less complicated than Both Sides Now. Like Both Sides Now is a complicated song. And that idea came from Nick Baxter, who was one of my music producers, and Alex Patsavas together. And they said, well, what do you think about Both Sides Now? And I said, and to their credit, because I said, first of all, I don't want to put Amelia in a position where she's singing Joni Mitchell, because Joni Mitchell is so iconic that is she going to be able to handle like taking on a song that's that big, that's that iconic? But also, we're never going to get Joni Mitchell. Like, how are we going to do that? But the song, the more that I read the lyrics, worked on the lyrics again with Alexandria, and the more we dug into them and started coming up with sign choices for the lyrics were so perfect. They were about the CODA experience. They were about perspective and looking at things from one angle and the other at the same time. That song is about passage of time and about how things change and have to move on. And Joni Mitchell has talked about that song as marking the end of her childhood. I think she said something like that was when childhood fantasy had to give way to adult reality. And this is a movie about a girl leaving her childhood behind and accepting, that she has to go out in the hearing world that has not been a place that she felt safe in up till now. And so there were just all these beautiful things in the song. And then once we worked on the sign choices and I saw Amelia sign it, it was beautiful because we also got to discover the song in a way that most people listen to lyrics, but they're not really talking about the lyrics and thinking about like, what does she mean when she says, this line, or what is it when you're looking at clouds from both sides? Like, are we making a physical cloud and actually moving around it? Is it being up in a plane and looking down? Like, we had to make all these choices about how to sign it. And in doing that, just dug into how beautiful and perfect that song is. So, and then Joni Mitchell tweeted about it, which was the best thing in the world.
It's amazing.
I think we got lucky in a way to have a limited budget for the music. Sean made the right creative choice. We had U2 was willing to basically give us one of their big songs for a reduced rate, but the reduced rate was still too
couldn't afford
expensive.
it.
Huh? I'm sorry?
We still couldn't afford it.
That was great.
My final question.
Let me chime in really quickly. This is Troy. Yeah. Regarding music, just to let you know, it's not my problem. I can't hear music, but I learned a lot. I really did learn a lot.
My favorite story from set, though, is that Troy and Daniel, can I tell this story, Troy, about the driving around with the rap playing?
Please.
Troy and Daniel were driving all over Gloucester like one day, and they were blasting rap, like with the radio turned all the way up, like all through town, windows down. And they pulled up to pick up Marley and Jack, Marley's interpreter. And Jack comes out and he's like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? And Troy was like, we're playing rap. And he's like, no, you're not. You're playing Christian Jesus music. So we had
really interesting. I was looking for something that really vibrated, and I didn't know that it was what it was. It was just vibrating a lot. And so I didn't know if it was good or bad music.
So we had an alt in the script. We had a version of the scene where the parents pull up to the high school, which was that, because it had really happened and it made us all laugh so hard that we were like, do we do it with like the Christian rock, or do we do it with we stuck with the rap? But it was a moment of like, maybe we should be art imitating life for a moment and throw that in the movie.
That's so fantastic. We are kind of out of time, but I just very briefly, Troy, CODA has been hailed as a breakthrough for deaf representation on screen, and your historic nomination hopefully puts deaf actors in play for more parts. So super briefly, you've been in the industry for years. Do you sense that things are moving in the right direction now?
Yes, I'm starting to see some improvements slowly. And many people have been contacting me regarding a few scripts, and some producers are considering changing hearing roles into a deaf role. And so I'm starting to see that after CODA, which is very exciting. And there was A Quiet Place 1 and 2 with a deaf character, and The Eternals came out on Marvel with a deaf superhero. And then our film was really much more focused on deaf culture and the family. So it was extremely special, and it was a great step forward. Because in the past, recently there was a film called The Sound of Metal, and it was about what it would be like for someone to lose their hearing and become deaf. And then with our film CODA, it's about bridging the hearing and deaf world with the CODA at the center of the story. And so my question is Hollywood ready for the next step? And so I've seen this cultural transformation, and this is just the beginning.
Absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations. I want to thank Patrick Wachsberger, Troy Kotsur, Sian Heder, and Justin Murrah. Thank you so much for your fantastic helping out Troy so you can understand what I'm saying. Everybody, make sure you stick with God Derby. Go and see CODA again. We're waiting for CODA 2, by the way, guys. You need to make a CODA 2. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thank you.